This community is not just Hi, everybody. Welcome to a special episode of the PerformHappy Podcast, where today my guest is Tammy Barlette, who is a retired fighter pilot who went to the prestigious U.S. Air Force Weapons School and managed in the meantime to have 3 kids, one of which is a gymnast. So I just have a billion questions for you already. Tammy, welcome to the show.
Thank you. Thanks for having me. I really appreciate it. This is an awesome podcast. And I think, having a variety of people on helping parents and gymnasts is so needed.
Absolutely. And Tammy is a mental performance coach. So she does what I do, but she does it for fighter pilots, for pilots. Like how cool to apply this set of skills toward a population who really needs to be mentally sharp. So Tammy, would you just give us a little background on how you got to where you are and what you do helping pilots today?
Yeah, of course. I started off going to the University of Minnesota, where I did Air Force ROTC, which is how I joined the military. And they had asked me when I showed up, because I just showed up, I want to serve my country and the Air Force is how I want to do it. And they said, well, do you want to be a pilot? I thought, yeah, that sounds fun. I'd never considered it because I just never knew. I didn't know any pilots, let alone female pilots. And I thought, as a gymnast and a roller coaster kid and a tree climber, this seemed like the perfect office in the sky. And so I pursued that path. I got selected. I went to training. And my first assignment was as an instructor pilot. And this is where mental performance first came into view, but I didn't really recognize it, because basically what I learned was, even though I was doing a ton of stick and rudder instruction, what I discovered is that my mental performance training that I was giving, I didn't even realize I was giving, was much more impactful to people's trajectory in a positive direction than some of the stick and rudder stuff. Because people had the skills, they were letting their minds get in their way, which is common in sport and gymnastics as well. So I did that. And then I went on to fly the A-10 Warthog, it's this plane that's over my shoulder here. I know not everyone's seeing it, but it's a single seat attack aircraft. And then I had cervical spine reconstruction. So I went and flew unmanned platforms, which means I was sitting in the United States, flying planes that were in Iraq or Afghanistan. Totally different mental game there, fighting a war and then going home and kissing your kids goodnight. And then I wanted to get back in the cockpit and fly formation again. So I got an exception to policy for my neck. And I went back and I taught at pilot training in the T-38, which is a tandem seat like fighter trainer. I did that for 6.5 years. And I started implementing this mental performance training that I started recognizing was so impactful. And upon retiring, I went into professional speaking, but then I realized that there is a lot of people out there who are flying planes that didn't get the support I did by going through, Air Force training, which is very rigorous. And I saw a need, and this need out there is, these other private pilots to commercial pilots just, could use some mental performance training, because although some people are naturally more gifted in how they approach things with mindset, it's something that's teachable. We can train our minds. And so many people don't think that that's a possibility, but it is so impactful. And so that's where I kind of went into this, seeing that athletes were using this as because you're teaching athletes, and it's really powerful. And then you see professional athletes using it. And I'm thinking to myself, well, pilots are literally putting their life on the line every time they go in the air. They need to use this too, because you cannot just pull over on a cloud. It doesn't work like that. Like, you have to stay in the mental game. So that's where this all came about. And I have a course that I'm teaching, and it's been great.
Very cool. So I think about, so many applications to gymnastics, and we're, entering the competitive season for the, higher level optional collegiate gymnasts. And one thing that comes up for a lot of people is that they are really, really great in the gym. They can hit routines in the gym. And then when they get into that competition environment, the adrenaline starts to starts to move, and then there are little mistakes that are made. And then the kids they're kicking themselves going, wait, why did I
Right.
fall? And I never fall on that. And so I would love, from your perspective, some tips that really work for the pilots, where you have to be focused. You got to be perfect. You got to be right on. How do you train that into a mind that allows somebody to really perform when there is legitimate safety pressure?
Yeah. Well, there's a couple things that popped into my mind. First one is the perfection thing. They've actually done research and found that moderate perfectionists are more successful, because perfectionists are only moderately successful because they delay and they have anxiety and they hesitate. So I like to say, strive for perfection, but don't be a perfectionist, meaning have your set objectives, but if you don't meet them, that's okay. Have like a window of what is okay, because no human is perfect. And I used to tell my students when I would fly with them, the only difference between you and me is how many mistakes you make and how big they are, because there is no perfect flight. Just like, you might see a perfect 10 or whatever the current score is for gymnastics, but there's probably something in there that wasn't perfect. You know what I mean? We're not perfect. So that's one thing that hits me. The second thing that is really key is the whole identifying that those what is it called? The hormones that go through your body, the adrenaline. If you feel that intensity and you feel the nausea and the sweaty hands, if you tell your brain tells you, oh, I'm nervous, it interprets that as I'm not ready. And then it and I like to say it puts like a weight vest on you. But if you recognize those feelings as the same response as you would get to excitement, right? Same feelings, butterflies, sweaty hands. For me, I got to go to the bathroom a lot, and you can stop saying, oh, I'm nervous. Maybe it'll still pop into your brain, but shift it to, I'm excited, because that's your body saying, this is important and I'm giving you extra so you can perform better. And if you interpret it that way, instead of going, oh my gosh, this means I'm not ready, that can make a significant difference. Now, the other thing I want to mention, and this actually happened to me in gymnastics, and I didn't recognize it until way later. When I was getting ready, I was in weapons school and I was getting ready for flights. Some of my fellow students came up to me and they're like, Tammy, you are such a pinger. And that means like I was pinging off the wall, ping, 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 all over the place. I'm like, oh, really? I had no idea. Okay. And I had this idea that if you're calm, you're prepared. And so I tried to appear calm. And what happened is a few weeks later, they came up to me and they're like, you're still pinging. And I looked at him and I said, well, clearly that works for me. So we're just going to go with that. And then I discovered later, obviously, when I started doing mental performance training, that everybody has their own level of arousal, if you will. What's the word they use, right? And I am at a higher level to perform. Like if I'm too calm, I don't perform well. So this goes back to the gymnastics story. I was on the beam in high school, had to do like 10 routines on the high beam, and I did double front walkovers. And I thought to myself, this is like routine number 6. I'm so sick of this like nauseous feeling. I'm so tired of being nervous about missing that first foot. I never miss. I've never missed. And I kind of just calmed myself down and I just went for it. And guess what happened? I missed. And I ripped my ACL, actually. All because I didn't recognize that level of arousal was good for my performance. So I know that was a long answer, but it's so important to the gymnasts out there to recognize this, and parents too. It's okay. It's okay to be nervous. You can shift that into, I'm excited. I'm excited. I'm excited.
Yes. Well, and people will ask me, what do I do before I compete? And I go, okay, hold on. What did you do before the meet? You did well. That's what you do. And sometimes they'll go, well, I didn't do anything. Well, okay, good. So we're not going to add a bunch of stuff. We're not going to be like, you have to jump up and down and you have to get really calm, or you have to visualize, or if you didn't do that and you did really well, you don't require all of that stuff. And actually a lot of kids will do all the stuff because they think it makes them better. And all it does is their brain goes, oh boy, it's time to get nervous because we're doing all this stuff again.
Yeah.
versus just going, I need to be laughing with my friends beforehand.
Yeah.
I need to be, you know, everyone, like you said, everyone has a different level of activation that they need. So starting
Mm-hmm.
to pay attention to that as you go through your competitions can be so helpful, because you realize, oh, I actually need to be much calmer than my teammate,
Mm-hmm.
or
Yeah.
vice versa.
Yeah.
And you figure that out by trial and error, by going,
Yeah.
this doesn't work for me. Good to know. Now I know
Exactly.
to not try that, you know, and I imagine there's not a whole lot of like trial and error that you can do as a fighter pilot. You sort of have to nail it, right?
Well, there is some parameters, yes, but I mean, there's definitely ways you can figure out if the flight went better or worse, like,
Mhm.
so yeah, you have to hit certain parameters, but was that a good landing or a bad landing? Did you hit the target or not hit the target? I don't know.
Yeah. Yeah. So you
So,
can look back and well, like you said, nobody's a robot. If you slow motioned every, 10.0 collegiate gymnastics routine of last season, you could find deductions, I'm sure.
right.
So we aim for excellence. And I
Well,
love that you touched on the excitement thing too.
yeah, and one thing that you kind of mentioned and bringing the fighter pilot into this piece of it that's applicable to outside of the flying community is the fact that fighter pilots we brief and we debrief. So we set particular goals, measurable goals, expectations, not a ton, I mean, you have an overall goal, right? Mission, and you have a couple of these three things are what we're actually working on today. And then when we get done, we debrief to those objectives, and that makes a significant difference. And a lot of people just, they'll just leave. And like, if you stop and go, hey, I'll ask my daughter, what three things or well, we'll pick each event. What thing was something you want to fix next time? But I want you to walk away looking at what was good about it. So we go through each of her, events and go, what was awesome about that? If you were looking at this as a friend looking at you, what would you say? Oh, that was a great kip right there. Whatever it might be,
Yeah. Yeah.
So
Yep. Awareness. That's the foundation from my perspective of confidence, that you
yeah.
first have to pay attention before you can start to kind of gather the clues that say, this is what makes me perform well. This is what builds my confidence.
Yeah.
So being a woman in a very male dominated industry, I'd love to talk about sort of you finding your voice, because I know that's a big part of these gymnasts. In order to really feel confident, they have to find their value. They have to find their voice within their gym, within their sport.
Mm-hmm.
So what was that journey like for you, being able to stand in your own greatness when other people might not have seen you as great?
Yeah. It was challenging at first, when I first showed up at pilot training, I started to, I kind of acted like a guy. And I quickly realized that A, I didn't like that. B, nobody else liked that. And I'm not saying like dramatically, but kind of like you should lean one direction or the other. I just learned that I needed to be myself. Whatever that was, everything was much smoother when I just was myself and didn't try to fit myself into a mold. Because society has this, we have this idea in our minds that something that we need to be, that the awesome gymnast does X, Y, and Z. Awesome pilot does, A, B, and C. But we have to define that for ourselves. Because if you try and fit yourself, it's like trying to fit a square peg into a round hole. It just doesn't work. And it's going to be awkward. So, I think some of it is you have to figure out your own goal. Like, why are you there? Why are you in gymnastics? Do you love it? Do you want to be a collegiate gymnastics? Or are you just doing it for fun? Do you like to perform? Like, what is it? And then you also want to figure out, like, are you working towards that is your work effort matching your goal? You know what I'm saying?
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
So, a lot of times I didn't feel like I fit in. But more often than not, when I just relaxed and was like part of the team, instead of trying to, like stand out, which I wasn't trying to, but the thing is you kind of do sometimes when you're a female in a male dominated community. It was more fun if I was just part of the team and it just was myself. And I think that applies to gymnastics too. We look at people and we think, I want to be that person. Well, they have great traits that you maybe want to emulate, but do it your way. Find out your core values and what matters to you.
Yeah. Well, I think that applies on the mental level and on the physical level. Like, I look back and think, the Shawn Johnson and the Nastia Liukin, they're going to be different gymnasts, no matter,
Yeah.
how many hours they train. We've got your little powerhouse, and you have your clean line, beautiful ballerina gymnast.
Yeah.
And that's, if you Shawn Johnson try to be Nastia, you're going to be disappointed all the time.
Yeah.
If you just go, okay, this is who I am. These are my strengths. These are skills that I like. This is things I feel confident doing. And maybe I don't want to go to college, but my teammates do, and that can be okay.
Yeah.
Or maybe I do want to go to college and my teammates don't, and that can be okay. To allow yourself to have a totally different, just a different sport, even though the person next to you is the same age and the same level. You get to be a different person, and that is okay. I think for adolescents, that can be really hard to wrap our minds around, that it's okay to be different.
Well, and I think too that you hit the nail on the head about your strengths and maximizing your strengths. Now, clearly there's areas of weaknesses. You have to work on them, but they have found that you make a much more significant impact in your own success if you work on your strengths and even making them even better. Obviously, in gymnastics, you have to work on your weak areas, but don't forget that if you're really good at floor and you put more effort in, you could go, you can make an even bigger impact. So, a lot of times people only work on their weaknesses, and then they don't put that effort into their strengths because they're like, oh, I'm already good at that. But you mentioned that, like tap into those strengths, maximize them.
Yeah, definitely. Definitely. Okay. So now let's talk about sport parenting, because that should be a sport in and of itself. So your daughter is a gymnast, right? You have just the one gymnast in the family?
I do. I have only one gymnast. Yes.
Yes. But you have 3 kids, but one gymnast.
They're all athletes though.
I'm sure. Yes, that's how it goes. So she has had, her own confidence roller coaster to ride. I would love to know what it's been like, having the mind you have full of performance techniques, having to kind of find your place as a mom and not be the coach, so tell me about that experience, kind of watching her go through her, confidence journey as a gymnast.
Yeah, it's been fun. It's been challenging. And particularly last year when I found you, had always, been fairly stable mentally. And I've always talked to her about what is she thinking about? Is she, we're going to shift the words nervous to excited, and what can you control and what can you not control? And, all these things, what are you looking forward to? What did you do good? All that stuff. But she hit a block last year, jumped a high bar. And it was interesting because she had done it probably a year and a half prior when she was really little. Before she had to do it, she wanted to try it, and she was successful. It was so cool because she was so tiny, but she kept doing it, and she was doing it alone, and she fell at open gym on the back of her neck. And thankfully she didn't get injured, but it scared her really bad. And so when she got to move up to level 4, and this is like probably over a year later, jump to high bar is now something she has to do. And she just was struggling. And I did some of the, the standard parent things. Oh, it's not that big of a deal. Just go for it, and I was getting stuck, which is funny because I thought, I'm a mental performance coach. What the heck? But I found your training, and it was amazing because it helped me look at this situation much differently. What I observed was that she was fine jumping with the coach, but she wouldn't jump on her own. And they were having her like jump from like a mat that was right below the bar. So we could tell she could do it, but there was something about being on the bar. So once we had a session with you, and you told her, was a 7, find what level makes you comfortable, like on 1 to 10, 7, I can do this. So that's enough confidence where I'll go for it. So we put the little floor bar, like not very far away from a higher bar, and she jumped, and then we kept pushing it back, and she had to have this 7 level. And then we took that into the gym and talked to her coach about it, and explaining what we did and how it was this progression of keeping this level 7 confidence. And if it ever wavered, they'd go back to something that had a level 7 where she felt like she could do it. If it was any harder than that, she wouldn't do it. And she'd ask for help and they supported her. And I know this isn't going to happen for everybody, but within one day, she had it because she understood what was happening. And I think some of that comes from doing the mental performance training with her on my own. She was already open to the idea. That was kind of key. I think a lot of it comes from these children that jump into this program might not be open to it at first. So you have to, parents, if you're listening, just be patient with them to open up their minds to using this. And then once they open their mind to use it, it's going to be effective. It's powerful.
Yeah. Well, and it's so great that you sort of rattle off all of the amazing tools, all the, controllables, and having this great perspective, learning a growth mindset. There's, you sort of she already had that foundation.
Yeah.
So I see a lot of coaches who they try to take baby steps. They do the spots, and there's something that just isn't working and they don't know why. She won't just jump to the bar. She won't just tumble. She won't, whatever it is. And it comes down to a lot of the time that, the foundational mindset that, if the kid ultimately is just going to say, well, but that's not good enough and I'm not making progress and it's just the floor bar and I'm no good. And, if they have that relationship with themselves, then it can be really hard. It's sort of like you need that twofold system to be able to go, okay, I'm going to have a good relationship with myself. I'm going to be patient with myself. I'm going to find the good. I'm going to be positive, and I'm going to communicate with my coach. I'm going to tell him when I need something. And we look at it and go, oh, it's so simple. This is so simple, but it can be really baffling. And it's not great that you had to go through this, but I think it shows parents out there that somebody who's an expert on this even was kind of baffled by the, the experience of a mental block. So don't, if you're also like, what is happening? You're definitely not alone, because it can feel really confusing. You look at the kid and go, she's physically capable.
Yeah.
What we're being positive. I don't know what to do here. So,
it reminds me of, as a parent, I know that I can stay patient and really calm until I'm out of ideas to handle problem X. As soon as that happens, that's when I lose it. And I think that applies to the coaches too. And as a parent, I respect that they were getting frustrated because they didn't know I don't know what more to do. And I wish they would all take your training, because it really made a difference for me to understand that fear is real, whether it seems real to us or not. It's a real emotion. And the other thing that I think really mattered, and when I drive in carpool with the other gymnasts, I talk about mindset stuff with them too. And I've been able to help a few of them, is that they're in this adolescent phase. And I don't know if I learned this from you or somewhere else, but I think it was you, that their body is changing. Their hormones are changing to a point where they're trying to, it's separate from their parents, right? So becoming more independent, and becoming more independent means that I need to make safer choices because now I'm in a more threatening situation. And so naturally they're becoming a little bit more conservative with what they're going to do. I do remember as a young gymnast willing to try anything. And as I got older, I did get more fear, and I didn't know why. And people always talk about that. Well, I didn't learn a full twist until I was older. So I only ever did it with a spot because I was lost. I didn't know where I was when I started turning, and I'm like, I can't do this. But people say if I learned it earlier, it would have been okay. But if I had the mindset training like like you're giving now, that's phenomenal. I probably would have worked past that. But
I feel the same way. I quit at level 7 because I was like, well, this is as far as my broken brain can carry me, which is so sad. But so, yeah, it's like, there are really simple ways. So, okay. So that makes me think about your concept of like risk assessment and risk tolerance.
Okay.
When you're 8, there's no risk. You're immortal. You're like, woo, I'll try it, mom. Sure. I'll jump off that. My little brother, that kid was like completely fearless. He would do a flip off of anything. I'd be like, whoa, there's rocks. Hold on, come back.
Yeah.
Whereas I had this like really low risk tolerance. I was a lot more nervous. I was a lot more aware. And this is a healthy thing. You want to know, I actually am not physically trained to do that full twisting back layout. And it's probably not a good idea. Versus, it feels risky. I'm uncomfortable. What does your training say? Like, how does one navigate that moment of it doesn't feel good, but I am physically prepared for this.
Right. So I am thinking about, when you're uncomfortable with something, we know that our brains are there to protect us and keep us safe. That's what our brains will do. So if your brain is interpreting it as dangerous, it's going to send signals to your body that are going to say, whoa, hold on now, let's not do this. And it might even actually stop you. But that's where I think visualization really comes in, because our brains don't know the difference between something you actually did and something you're visualizing doing. So I tell Charlie time and time again, when she's worried about like going the wrong way on her back extension or whatever, something like, okay, 5 times I want you to picture doing it perfectly. Because basically you're greasing the skids for your brain to say, oh, I've seen this before. It's safe. I didn't get hurt, even if you've never done it. I mean, obviously there's going to be some struggle if you've never done it to visualize it, but you can prep your brain a little bit in the sense that I've done this. And then also your technique of like the tiny little steps. Where are we level 7 comfort? Where can we go the next one? Lastly is the whole trust in your coach, and that's where I get a little leery when coaches say they're going to spot and then they don't. The trust goes away, and that's so not okay in my personal opinion.
Mm-hmm. Yep. I 100% agree. Even if the kid's body doesn't need a spot,
right?
Their brain needs your support.
Mm-hmm.
And that needs to be in the form of your pinky finger touching her back, or whatever they're asking for. And even if they don't need one, it's like, oh, it hurts my little heart when these coaches are like, see, I didn't even spot you. You can do it. And I've done that as a young coach.
Yeah.
I guarantee I have done that. See, you're fine. You didn't even need it. You're great. You're good to go. And I thought that was enough. We're really, the brain is sending, this is not safe. This is threatening. I can't trust my body. I can't trust. And then now you add in, I can't trust my coach.
Yeah. My coach said they were going to be there and they weren't. What happens when
there?
Yeah.
What if I needed them? What if they're off the floor? Yeah. It just creates this level of doubt. Well, and so, okay, as a fighter pilot, doubt, I'm sure that there's moments of doubt.
Oh, yes.
How do you, what sort of techniques or skills do you use or do you teach that when the doubt creeps in, you can maintain your focus?
Well, there's a couple ways. One is, I like to say, you have to stay in the present moment. So if you're what ifing, you're not in the present moment. You need to shift that mantra of what if in your mind to what now? What now? So you're on the beam. You can't be thinking about your dismount if you're still doing your back handsprings. It just doesn't. You have to go, what now? What now? So, dismiss that. That's huge. And then also, and this goes in flying, 80% solution now is better than 100% solution never. And that just means you don't wait for perfection. Like, you have to make decisions. There are times when I would instruct students and I'm like, you need to make the call and you need to make it now. And we'd force them to do it because even though it wasn't the right call, I need to know that when I send you up in that plane by yourself, you're going to make a decision. Yeah. And it may not be the best, but that decision is better than no decision. So, how does that apply to gymnastics? Again, just, you got to focus on the moment and you have to decide before you go that you're going to go for it. Don't go into your bar routine not sure if you're actually going to go for the dismount. Like, go in knowing I'm going to do this or not. Like, don't decide midway. I mean, unless something changes, we all know that can change things, but
yes. But I think so many athletes are just trying to please their coach and they're saying, I can do it. It's fine. Yep. You can do it. Go, just go. High beam, go. And so these kids who don't have a voice and they just go, okay, sir. Yes, sir. They go out there with this doubt brewing of, I don't know if I'm going to do it. And what if I don't do it, which pulls them out into the future. So they're not in the moment. They're not doing their mount correctly. So that's setting them up to have, their rhythm is off on bars or whatever. They're ahead of themselves. And then they get to that point, they're so tense. And then their fear response is going crazy. Whereas, imagine if you would have gone, coach, I'm feeling a little off.
Yeah.
Just that one different decision rather than I could do it. I'm fine. I'm tough. I think there's this like mental toughness myth that keeps us stuck even. Like, I just got to throw it. I just got to force it. I got to be tough. Whereas communication is a scary thing that takes courage that can set you up for way more success than trying to like tough through it.
Yeah. I remember there was, if you want to take this, the flying world, there's definitely that environment of, oh, I got to just suck it up and do it. Like, I don't really want, I don't really know, but there's definitely moments when I just walked outside to go to the jet and I'm like, I'm not up for it today. Like my mind is not in it, and it's too dangerous, especially when I have someone else's child in the front cockpit that I'm responsible for, I mean, that brings some reality to it. But if you apply that to your gymnastics and go, can I do it today? Yeah, there are days to tough it out, but there are days that you just got to follow your intuition, and be strong.
Yeah. Yeah. That reminds me, I was in the gym with a girl the other day who was freezing up on her beam series. And she had just like, 3-4 months of killer trajectory, doing so great. She's ahead and she's freezing up on her beam series and she's starting to, freak out. And I'm like, okay, let's do a little debrief. How many hours did you sleep? Did you have lunch? She was like, not enough, not enough.
Yeah.
So I was like, okay, so we're not at optimum. We're not running on all cylinders here.
Right.
And so I was like, well, what are our options? Do you want to go tell your coach I didn't get enough sleep? I didn't eat enough. My body's feeling off. I think I need to go to low beam. And she looked at me and she's like, no, I got this. And so she did. She had that crossroads where she's like, am I okay? Or am I choosing in? Or am I choosing out? And she got that choice. I was no judgment from me. I know her coach would have listened and given her what she needed. She looks at me. She's like, no, I'm going. And she gets up and she hits it. And
that's awesome.
When you get into that commitment where you're like, okay, I know things are not 100%, but I truly believe that I've got what I need to in this situation to make it happen. It was so cool to watch that lock in. And I can imagine as a pilot, you're not going to be 100%, but you're like, no, I'm good. I've got this.
And you, like you said, acknowledging that there was those issues. It's kind of like, this is kind of silly, but I have an Aura ring. I wear an Aura ring, which gives me like biometric feedback on like my sleep, and you can use it in a negative way, but I always use it in a positive way. Meaning if I wake up and I see that I didn't sleep very well, I don't use that as an excuse to be like, oh, I'm just going to slack off today. I use it to go, okay, I'm going to make some educated decisions. Should I run super hard today, or should I just take a jog, or, whatever it might be. It's information that I can use. And it's nice that, if they take this information, they go commit. Yes, I can. That makes a big difference. And it also reminds me of, my other kids are, one's football player, one's cross country, and they all do track. But my cross country runner, I explained to her, and I don't know the exact stats, but they say that when your mind starts to tell your body you're done, you still have 40% left, because your brain is trying to protect you. Go, no, let's stop doing this. This isn't safe. But if you can push through that multiple times, in a safe way, your body's going to start recognizing, when I feel that, I keep going. I don't quit. And that can apply to gymnastics as well. Not exactly the same, because it's not an endurance sport like that, but it's the same concept.
Well, I think the discomfort that comes from performance anxiety can definitely apply there. That, I don't know about you, but when I get ready to speak in front of a group that's bigger than one I've spoken in front of, I get the whole activation. I get the, my stomach. I want to call my husband and be like, I don't know if I'm good enough. This is too scary. And he's like, yeah, okay. Anyway, have a good time, hun. Like you'll knock it out of the park. But you get that moment of this is not good. This is a bad idea. Your brain's like, don't do it. You'll be eaten by a tiger immediately. And then I go up and I give the talk and I'm like, that was so great. I call my husband. He's like, you don't say. It was great. Okay. I'm so surprised. But, you go into competition, you feel like you're going to throw up, you touch the beam, you feel like you're going to pee your pants. And then you look back and you go, oh, that was totally good. Okay. And then the next time you have that sensation, now I just know this is my pre-speaking sensation. Hello. Nice to see you again. I see you there. And then I go and do the thing. And I think the kids, they build sort of this tolerance to feeling, that excitement, arousal, discomfort, whatever you want to call it, and go, yeah, this is okay. This is a deal.
I think that Michael Johnson was running, the Olympic sprinter, right? And somebody asked him after the race if he was nervous. And he said, well, yeah, absolutely. I was nervous, which means I'm ready. He took that as a positive sign. Like he goes, when I'm nervous, I know I'm good. I'm good to go. I'm in. I don't know what his words were, but it was a positive thing. So he took that nervousness and spun it to go, yep, this means we're all in. We're ready to go. And it seems so small, but our subconscious hears things that our conscious brain doesn't, and it's much more powerful, right? So we have to talk to it in a good way. Like, when your self-talk or whatever, if you just want to call them your thoughts, so it doesn't sound, some people don't like that self-talk thing, but your thoughts matter. And if you do a thought inventory and you look back and you find out that 50% of the thoughts you have are negative, well, don't really be too surprised. You got to shift those. Even if you don't believe it, you can start telling yourself, I'm confident. I'm comfortable. I got this. I'm strong. I'm powerful. Whatever it is that you want to be, you can be it.
Yes. Well, there's the negativity bias that we have from, the caveman times where if I walk out of the cave, I need to know what I'm bad at. I need to know I'm not a good swimmer if a tiger's chasing me toward a river.
Yeah, don't go in the water.
I need to know I'm a very slow runner if I'm looking at a meadow that I'm gonna have to sprint across. So it's like we're naturally bombarded with all of our weaknesses.
Yeah.
It's something that keeps us safe. So
yeah,
we can look at that and go, okay, yes, I hear you. I see you there. And I am good at climbing a tree. So I'm going that direction. Or
there you go.
And just to know we're supposed to be negative. It's part of our survival instinct. So once we can be aware of that, catch it, then we have some control. Then we get back to, the controllables you mentioned in the beginning of our talk. Well, what can I control? I can't necessarily control that wild thought that pops into my head, but I can control what I focus on next.
Right.
Yeah. One of the things, control the focus.
We went to a meet on Saturday and Charlie was like, oh, I wonder if they can have that weird springboard. And I said, Charlie, let me ask you a question. I said, do you have control over whether that springboard is there or not? She goes, no. I said, well, then we're not going to let that invade our thoughts right now because you can't do anything about it. So what can you control? So when she got there and she said, so there was another girl who was complaining about the springboard. And I'm like, did you say something to her? She's like, no, I didn't know what to say. I'm like, Charlie, I just told you, you don't have control over that. Like, we're learning. She's 9, but
yes.
We waste a lot of thought energy on things that are not actually under our control. So you have to go, can I control that? Mm-hmm. I can control whether I point my toes, on the bars or not, but I can't control the score the judge gives me. I mean, truly,
Yep. Coach might have got dumped by their boyfriend the night before and they're not giving out any 9s today.
You never know.
You never know.
Subjective, right?
Exactly. That makes me think about my mom. My mom was actually a fun fact. My mom was a world champion Wild West shooter. So she had like antique guns and the dresses. And so she's the world champion. Cool. And she would train in 110-degree heat. She would train in the snow. She would train in the rain. If the weather was bad, she was training because she was going to show up and know that while somebody else is freezing and can't feel their fingers, she's already shot like that a bunch of times. And if someone else is hot in their clothes and can't see straight, she's already done that and hydrated. Mm-hmm. And, so you look at that and go, I hope there's a funky board because then other people are going to get psyched out, bring it on. I'm good. I love a good slippery beam because then I know my competition is going to be in their head about it. Like bring it on.
Right. Exactly. Yeah. I think Greg Louganis, he talked about there's a sweet spot on he's a diver, right? So there's a sweet spot on the board when you dive and you ideally want to hit that. But he basically avoided being a perfectionist in the sense that he relished in the fact that if he didn't hit that sweet spot, he could still pull off that awesome dive instead of hitting that, oh, I didn't hit the sweet spot. And then now it's in my head kind of concept. Yes. He relished in the fact that he could take a crappier situation, just like you're saying, and use it for positive. Go, I can do this. Maybe some of these gyms should turn the temperatures down in the winter. And I hear about all these Olympic gymnasts who are like, oh, it was so cold in the arena. Maybe we should practice like that.
Yes. Well, and I know the local gym, they had training at 8 a.m. this weekend and the kids were like, oh, why do we train at 8 a.m.? Because we compete at 8 a.m. So we got to, get some of those practices out of the way. So but again, it's all about perspective that you either go, I'm so nervous, this is bad. Or you go, I'm excited, this is great. The board is bad. Oh no, the board is different. Great. Or I'm not going to think about the board at all. I'm just going to be sitting here in the car listening to Taylor Swift like getting my groove on so that I can show up with a smile on my face. But you figure out your needs and then always be sort of improving on those strengths and weaknesses and those little optimizations.
Yeah.
And gosh, I wish I could put my kids in your carpool so they could get a little
Ah,
dose of
fun
positivity on
sometimes.
the way to gym.
The one other thing I think that makes a difference too, we do this in flying a lot, is we go over emergency procedures, but we don't just go over them, like talk about it. In pilot training, we literally have all the instructors and the students sit around a room, and then we'll be like, okay, the wind is 130 at 10. You're on runway 13. You're about initial takeoff, rolling down the runway at 100 knots, and you see a red light in the cockpit. Lieutenant Barlette, you have the aircraft. And like, I would have to get up, stand there, and like stand at attention, talk through the whole emergency. And we used to think it was hazing, but what we realized, it was actually a way for them to simulate stress and force us to work through this very challenging mental problem. Obviously we weren't actually flying the plane, but deal with it and stay calm in this horribly difficult situation. Cause it's funny, social situations are very stressful. Now bring it into gymnastics. I think it's important. Like I talked to Charlie, hey, what are you going to do if something you don't expect happens? How are you going to react? If you were to fall off the beam, how are you going to compose yourself? And a lot of people think you shouldn't talk about that because it's like greasing the skids for that to happen. I'm like, well, it's not going to make it happen. It might actually calm them down because they know if that happens, they know what they're going to do. Yes. They have a plan versus going, oh my God, what am I going to do?
Yes.
Like, so when she does her floor routines and she screws up at home, I no matter what, I say, you need to keep going, keep going, keep going. Like, and so she's practiced keeping going, even though she's like, I don't know where I'm at in the routine. So then she never gets lost because she can always figure out where she is.
Yes.
Or like when she's, when they're in the splits and they roll around on the floor, usually I always say, okay, breathe. This is your moment to like breathe and get yourself back, calm yourself, like have these techniques ready to go.
Yes, definitely. That's one of my favorite confidence techniques, is to have them write out a map of obstacles. What could go wrong? What could slow you down? Injury, mental block, negativity, write it down.
Yeah.
And then we go, okay, great. What are 3 solutions for that? What are 3 solutions for that? What are 3 solutions for that? Could you come up with 10 if you had to? Could you come up with 20? Could you come up with 100 solutions to that mental block? You could prevent it. You could coast through it. You could bounce back from it, and then they look at that and go, oh, okay. So then I say, just scratch off all of the obstacles and look at your path.
That's cool.
Look at what's left. All of those solutions are the way.
Yeah.
That now you don't even have to worry about the obstacles because you're already in the prevention. You're already in the bounce back. And then if you fall, you know what to do. If you get afraid, you know what to do. So then they don't have to be afraid of the fear anymore because they know exactly what to do. Like if Charlie gets afraid of a skill in an upper level, she's not going to be freaked out. She'll just be like, okay, coach, I need a spot.
Yeah. Yeah, exactly. If you have a plan, because like I think about when you compare this to adults and what are their what ifs. Like for now, let's say you're leading a virtual meeting and you are freaking out because you're like, what if my internet doesn't work? Well, if you have a plan, pretend that actually happens. What are you going to do? Then you're not half distracted before the meeting going, what if my internet, because you have a plan, like you can release that. And the same thing applies, like, just like you just said, you can let it go and just focus on what now.
Yes, not the what if. Yes, Tammy, this has been so wonderful. Thank you so much for chatting about all things mental performance and gymnastics and flying. And I love how it all goes together.
Yeah, it does. It does.
Yeah. So if people want to follow you, I know you have a lot of amazing information for professionals and for pilots. Where can they find you?
Well, the best place to find me is on LinkedIn, Tammy Barlette. I do have a website, tammybarlette.com. And you can find me there. But I would say LinkedIn is the best place. I do my best to post with intention, not for attention. So, and I try to make these flying stories something that are applicable outside of flying, because mostly they are. It just, the flying part makes it interesting and fun to read. But there's always a lesson. So
awesome. We'll link to that in the show notes for sure. Thank you again, Tammy, for being here today.
Yeah, thank you for having me.